Save Our Kids is an opportunity for you to be introduced to a few school and student helpers. If there is a space or a place to improve the lives of our children, we know a few families and business owners who have made it their business to answer the call for help and provide a solution to those challenges that impact our children and eventually us all. We could not just choose one kiddo to save, so we are asking for your help to reach more. Join Keeping Your Kids Safe as we identify some of the problems and share a few solutions that have been created just for you. Whew, okay. Hello, everybody. This is always good to see those nice, beautiful faces looking back at me, because now I know I'm not in this by myself. So this is always good. So, we got some new people. Hi, Leonard. So I'll start off this time by just giving everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about what you do and what solution, what problem you are solving. Here, we only talk about the W's. We don't really talk about the hows. The hows are left up for you guys to have those conversations, like in another setting. But here we want to just share with everyone the opportunity to be able to solve some of the problems, and then we'll go into a full conversation. Okay. So thank you very much for being with us today. And we're going to go ahead and start with, I'm going to be nice to you, Jean. I'm going to start with the ladies first. Okay. Perfect. Lucila, you are up first, my friend. Go ahead and share with everybody who you are and what you do.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tabata, for this opportunity. So here I am. So who am I? I am an educator, a coach, and a consultant. And so I am originally from Brazil, and I've been in the US since 2002. So over 20 years I've been here. I came to do my PhD in education at Ohio State University in Ohio, and I've been in other places in the US. So I have worked as academic faculty in teacher education for all these years since I graduated. And so within my role, I also focus my research in approaches to schooling and conventional schools, alternative schools, holistic schools, charter private schools. So I really looked at the whole lot that is out there. And so who do I work with now and who do I serve, right? And so for the past year and a half or so, I've been working with parents. So I've been providing coaching and consulting to parents. And so I basically offer three kinds of service to parents. I work with parents who are in the beginning of their search for schools, usually parents who are looking for private schools, or I work with parents whose kids are not adapting well in the schools. They are struggling, and then I work with them too. And then also with parents who are looking for some additional support at home related to the education of their kids. And so those are my target clients. And so why do I do that? That's one of your questions you have. I love education. I have always been passionate about education since I started teaching when I was younger. And I think I am an advocate for children, as you are, Tabata. I really don't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach to education to all kids. I think kids are unique, and they need sometimes different ways of being learning at school. And so I think that I really think we need to listen and observe kids and really trying to understand them in order to be able to provide the best education that where they can thrive. And I want to share the experience and the knowledge I have acquired over all these years and help parents whatever I can so that they can provide a better education for their kids. And sometimes can be at home. It doesn't need to be in the school.
I like that.
And so I want to go through the list.
No, you don't have to complete the list. It's just an idea as to where we are, right? And I really, when I met you, I was like, you have to come here and talk to us, because being a coach or a consultant when it comes to parents and what their participation is in their child's development is extremely key. And so I'm glad that you came and shared with us. So cool. I'm excited. This is going to be great. Okay, Jean, I'm still going to hang out with the ladies first.
Perfect.
All right, Laura Lynn, go ahead, share with everybody who you are and what you do.
All right, I'm in a public space here, so I'm just going to step out and have a little bit of a little bit quieter area. So apologize for the background. My name is Dr. Laura Lynn Mears, and I have founded a company called Steer Us. And with respect to Steer Us, what we do and have been doing is focusing on workforce development skills, specifically soft skills. For the last few years, we've been mostly working with college level youth. So from both colleges and universities, about 20 different ones across Canada and the USA, and working with their professors, helping them get ready through assignments, work-based learning, internships, paid and unpaid for those that are always tracking that, and understanding that, of course, we need to provide living wages for folks when we can. And what we've been doing is helping work them through application of their tech skills, but in the context of how do you communicate with other people? How do you build those interpersonal relationship skills? How do you work remotely with enough self-management and discipline and ability to be able to communicate when it is that you're stuck and you need some help? So teaching the youth these vital skills that they need for success in the workforce today, particularly as most of us now work from home at least a few days per week, and how there are multiple generations within the workforce and that communication styles vary from generation to generation, so that we need to understand how to be able to communicate effectively and kind of chip away at that 1.2 trillion annually that's lost because of poor communication in American businesses. That's just American. I know we've got international panelists here too, so I don't know what the number is worldwide, but it's not small.
Yeah, well, that's big. That's big. I think that that's amazing. I really appreciate what you do, because you're actually helping all of our students to have a better, their best step forward as they're going into adulthood. So I think that's amazing. So cool. Awesome. All right, Jean. I'm going to go ahead and hang out with you for a minute. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me. My name is Gene Petrino. I'm the co-founder of Survival Response. We're on a mission to prevent violence. Our two main categories that we focus on are healthcare and schools. We do this because, you know, there's clearly an epidemic of violence in our country, and through our experience, we realize that the approach that we've taken in the United States is really the wrong thing. We're teaching how to respond to it rather than how to prevent it. So we focus on preventative training for the schools because there's so much data and research and real world experience that shows that prevention is possible. These attacks that end up happening, they're not a surprise. That someone knew about it, and we need to start learning how to pay attention to that. And it's starting to catch on, but it's been very, very slow. And so that's where our mission primarily is to help prevent the schools and put schools back to where they're supposed to be, which is teaching and helping these kids become valuable, you know, parts of our community and not having to worry about the violence. So that's in a nutshell what we do.
That's pretty cool. I think everybody should connect with Jean, Lucila, or Laura Lynn, because there are definitely things that we can learn from those. So my name is Tabitha Barron. I am the founder of Keeping Your Kids Safe. What I do is very simple. We hear about those incidents all the time, those students being dropped off at the wrong bus stop, children being found in a bus barn, you know, sleeping, and various other scenarios. What I have done is created a platform that allows each child to effectively communicate their way home. Parents get a text message during the dismissal process. But the beauty of our program is it covers 100% of an elementary school campus. So that means walkers and bikers, car riders, childcare bus riders, and yellow bus riders all get scanned off of an elementary school campus. That allows everyone involved the parents to have peace of mind and know what time their child is on their way to their next destination and if they're going in the right direction. It allows administrators the peace to be able to lay their heads on their pillows and know every child made it to their destination, and they get to go home and spend time with their families on time. And then finally, for the child to be seen, heard, acknowledged, and safe. So that's the whole entire purpose of what we do, what I do. Okay, so what I'm going to say is, first and foremost, I want to thank all of you for spending your time with us. We got some people that are hanging out with us for sure. So Leonard, Joe, Rocky, PJ, thank you all for coming to spend time with us. So I want to thank the village, because the village has been very instrumental in keeping all of our kids where we need them educated, and they're doing the best that they can. So we don't want to ever fault them for that. Doing the best you can is extremely important. This is just a conversation starter, right? It is important to note we can change the outcome for our children if we come together and make a different choice and provide solutions that will improve the outcome of everyone, for everyone, right? So my frustration, and it just happened earlier this week, my frustration is that those that are in position to make a change don't seem to make the decisions that we would approve of as taxpayers and parents and family members, right? So I become very disappointed sometimes in the responses I get. And this is why. 42 million children go to sleep hungry every day. That's a problem that we can solve. 1.2 million children per day are sold into slavery. That is sex and work, right? There's 463,634 children that are sexually abused. That's every 68 seconds a child is abused, right? Sexually abused. We have 37% that cannot read on grade level. This is telling us that we have a problem and we can solve this. There are 4,300 children killed by gun violence a year. That number is higher than cancer. What did they say? It was higher than 3 points. One was cancer. There's like 3 different points that was higher than. It's beat those numbers. That's a problem that we can solve. And at least 2 children every single day, every single school get lost in transit. Just because your child made it to you doesn't mean that there wasn't a hiccup in making that possible. These are just a few numbers that support and let us know that there is things that we can do to improve the development of our children. And these are all important to me because these children, what we teach them in these years, these formative years, we have them for 18 years, period. 18 years. We have a chance to mold them and gift them everything that we need them to have, because then they have 60 plus years that we do not rule their worlds. And we have to be ready to deal with all of that, right? If we're doing the right things and we're teaching them the right things and we're letting them know that they count for something, guess what happens to them? They get to see things slightly different, right? We get to see how they treat their spouses, their work ethic, how they move in life. And then we get to say with pride or with shame that we did the right things, or oops, I forgot about that thing, right? So this is an opportunity to do that. We have, and I believe that parent 1 is the home, whether you have a 2-parent home or a single parent home. Parent 1 is home. Parent 2 is the school. If you can't partner with the school to do anything better, then you're going to have a hard time. So we all have to learn how to co-parent when we're single parents. We just need to learn how to co-parent when we have families and schools coming together, right? I also want to let you know that there are 4 million teachers in the U.S. 35% of them want to quit. These are all metrics that are letting you know that there's a problem, and our children are the ones that are being taught through these goggles. K through 12 teachers are #1 most burned out profession in the United States. 44% of the teachers K through 12 report often are always feeling burned out. 90% of them claim that feeling burnt out is a serious problem. Did you know that most of them are on medication for anxiety? Because I didn't know that, and that's a problem. So when we look at the metrics, it's telling us that we have problems to solve for, and it's our responsibility to do it. But because Gina's here, I want to be very clear. Since Columbine, high school shootings, 73. Elementary school shootings, 17. University shootings, 7. K through 8, K through 12, or other schools are 8, and middle school, junior high, 6 through 12 is 26. This is letting us know that we have work to do, and it's our responsibility to get that done. So now I'll go ahead and start the conversation, because is there anywhere we want to start with today? Because I feel like parents, Lucila, hi, yes, I'm doing it. Parents contribute to a lot of some of the things that are happening in the schools. So I would like to hear your viewpoint or your suggestions as to how parents can help their children to cope and deal with some of the contradictions from home to school, and how that contributes to why Jean is working so diligently to actually prevent or to actually look for the signs of some of these shooters.
So you want me to go first?
Yep, you can go first. It's all
Okay.
good.
So just before addressing your question, you mentioned about we have 18 years with those kids. We actually don't, because
Exactly.
if we would provide early childhood education for all kids in America, then we would have them for 18 years. But unfortunately, we don't. But so I think that parents can advocate for their children. I think that that's very important, that to have a two-way communication with the teacher, with the principal, with whatever school leaders that are out there. So just two-way communication, it's really, really important. That and I have noticed in my work, parents not being empowered to go and advocate for their children or to establish that relationship. And so I really would encourage parents, because it's so important for them to participate and to communicate with the school as much as possible. And if this communication is not in place, ask for it. Go and fight for it, because you need to be on top of what is happening in the school. So that's my first 2 cents given here.
I agree. Communication is a big key. It's a thing that it definitely starts at home. So if they're not being heard or seen at home, they're definitely not going to be confident enough to be heard or seen at school, or even raise their hand to be seen. But Jean, what do you think is one of the primary reasons why some of these students make a choice to use violence in schools, or even in the public?
I can tell you that statistically about 67%, I believe, or 63%, somewhere around there, of the school shooters were victims being bullied. So that was their primary thing, where they're physically bullied. Mostly, I think it's more verbal abuse and bullying that goes on in schools. And it comes down to, you're talking about family, getting the family involved. I think that's so important. I think that really is more of the root problem. Our families, both parents are usually working, or single parent household where they're working, and the kids aren't learning early on how to deal with the difficulties of life. So what ends up happening is they will encounter a problem, bullying, or maybe they like somebody, have a crush on somebody in school, and that person, says no and pushes them away. They don't know how to work through that process of emotions, and they end up creating a grievance. And that's the grievance stage is the very first sign of someone that's going towards becoming an active shooter. And it's proven. This is out there. There's tons of research on it, but they don't know how to deal with it. And most people can handle it. Most people, if you don't get your job promotion, or if someone that you like says they don't like you, you'll be upset, but you get over it. But there are people, and especially when you're talking about kids, they don't know how to work this out in their head. They're emotionally not capable of doing it, and they've got nowhere to go to. So they internalize it, and they're thinking it's about them, that they don't like me, everybody hates me, and they get angry, and that builds into this violent ideation. Well, I would like to get back at them, and they start thinking about how they're going to plan it, and before you know it, they're carrying out a horrific event. And the reality is, during this process of that pathway to violence, they're giving clues that this is happening, and we, as teachers, parents, friends, anybody involved, we're not paying attention to it. And when we do, we'll realize, and we say something, I've seen in the last couple of weeks, there's been multiple attempted school shootings that were stopped, not just schools. There was, I think one was at a church also, because that people listen, they saw something that was posted online and they catch people and stop them before. If we do that, we can stop these things, but no one's paying attention to it because we're waiting for it to happen. And then we think we got to train on how to respond when it happens. It's sort of backwards. We need to focus on that. But I think really it does start with the family and the parents being more involved in their kids' education, finding out what's going on at school and taking more of an active participation in their lives.
I agree. And that's why Laura Lynn, I knew. Come on.
So what I want to add to that is that, again, where does the accountability fall? So each year the CDC releases its report on dangerous behaviors. They interview 20,000 teens between the age of 13 to 18 randomly across the country, and they come out with a profile of dangerous behaviors, everything from having sex to using drugs to using all kinds of not just street drugs, but just all kinds of crazy behaviors. They also talk about self-harm. And so there's two statistics that really blew my mind in the latest report. One, that 20% of the teens that were interviewed said that they had ideations of suicide. 17% planned their suicide, and 10.5% have attempted. So that's terrifying. But here's the other part. Part of the reason, and a large accountability for the reason of them having suicidal ideations or violent thoughts and tendencies, is because of cyberbullying. More than 80% of kids cited being repeatedly cyberbullied. Okay, it's bad. You know, most of us grew up, we had some form of bullying, but not in the form that it is now. It's just absolutely inescapable. But here's the stat that I was really trying to get it around what you were saying, and that accountability. More than 2/3 of parents feel that their child is the cyber bully, but they're not stepping in and saying, there, let me take your cell phone away from you because you're not being a good digital citizen. You're going to learn some of the rules of the rights and privileges of having electronic devices and access to the internet. And once you demonstrate that you understand those rules and that that this is a privilege to have it, that you don't get to do things like bully others, then access to your devices will be restored. But parents don't want to break that friend dyad because everybody's so busy with their own things. Look at this example here this past week. That woman's 3-year-old died in the pool because she was FaceTiming somebody and didn't even notice her child was in the pool. And now she's suing the lifeguards that were there because they failed to prevent her child from drowning.
Yeah.
Right? Where's the accountability?
Yeah. It does really start I believe it does start with the it really does start with home and the families, right? I think that ultimately we get to the place where we have to be respectful of enough of all of the people, and be willing to listen. If your child is saying something, you really need to pay attention. I can tell you that I know somebody very personal who said that when he was in elementary school, his parents had a gun in the home. And what happened for him was he was being relentlessly bullied. Okay. And he's telling home and then he's telling school and nobody's listening. So we are contributing to this bad behavior. So that child doesn't have anything to say we want to hear. That child doesn't know enough that we don't want to hear it. So we shut them down. Well, what happened for him was that there's my video going off. In the event that if I get dropped off, just continue to have the conversation. We have a storm over here, so there's a very good possibility I might be bumped off my own LinkedIn Live. But what he did was he put a gun in his pocket and was on his way to school. And if it wasn't for the fact that that the gun fell out his pocket as his mom was taking him to school, he would have joined the ranks of an active shooter. And I asked him the question, why did you do that? What was it that made you do that? He said, I just wanted the pain. I just wanted it to stop. Nobody was listening. And this person just relentlessly came at me. So if that was happening before social media and everything was happening, imagine what's happening now, to your point, Laura Lynn, because they don't get a break. There's no place, no safe space for them anymore. So unless we increase the amount of communication we have with our children, this is going to continue to be a problem overall. But I see Amina actually asked a question.
Yeah, you know, I was looking at the comments too.
Me too.
And I think that we've been talking a lot about the family and the responsibility of the families, right, to work with their children. But what about the schools? I think that the schools have an enormous role into bringing those topics. I think that there is so much emphasis on the academics in the school, which is good, it's great, but what about the mental health of those kids? What about the relationship building? There are programs out there such as reciprocal work with children, and that it's very effective. And so why don't we have more of those programs in schools in order to work with those kids, to have dialogue, to build dialogue? And it's exactly what you said, Tabitha. We need to start listening to those children. So it's at home and it's at school. We need to provide spaces, because this is as important as the academics. If the mental health is not good, the academics are not going to work.
You're absolutely correct, because I believe the same thing. And this is the reason why, honestly, this is the reason why I've started this, because what I was told was mostly, we don't need that. That's not happening here. That's not part of our academic terrain. At the end of the day, we have to teach them. And here's my issue. And I say 18 years because the government says I'm responsible for 18 years. Now, whether or not that kid leaves at 14 or 16 is a totally different experience. But that the government says I'm responsible for their bodies for 18 years. And if I'm not willing to listen to them, if I'm pouring into them the value system I want them to have, and the school is snatching them out, that is where a disconnect is happening, one. And then the accountability always comes back to the parents, but here's the thing. I did the numbers. Look at the numbers. You go to work for 40 to 60 hours a week. Your child is in school for 7 hours a day. That's away from you. So if you do an 8 or a 9 hour day, your children are doing just as much time away from you as you are away from home, right? So everything that you pour into them, you only have about 2 hours a day to get it to spend with them, to kind of work on some of these other things. So I find it very interesting that the schools always say it's the parents' fault. I had a principal sitting there talking to me and telling me how it's all the parents' fault. The parents' fault for this and the parents' fault for that. But wait a second, you're my partner in raising this child. So when do you get to take accountability for your part? When they shut my niece down, it caused her 10 years of not being able to stand up for herself. That is the school's fault, because my mom taught her how to advocate for herself, and the school said there is no place for you to advocate for yourself here. You will do as I say, not as your parents do say. And that is where all of the problems come in at. So Laura Lynn, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say to that is teaching children emotional self-regulation is something that's not happening with enough frequency. And, we do apps and behavioral assessments, these kinds of things to look at it. And this is where a parent can put their time in and say, how do you look at it? What are the things that triggers you? Why do you get triggered? What do you do when you get triggered? How do you find that emotional calm again in those moments of heightened awareness when you are triggered? What do you do? How do you navigate it? That's one piece of it. The other piece is learning how to do this dialogue. And children aren't being taught how to be able to engage and communicate. They text, are you, emoji, something. And they're unable to fully express what they're feeling and how they're feeling through a couple of texts or even emoji pictures. And parents on the receiving end are unclear how to read and interpret those emojis. So what happens? You end up in this frustrated, once and once or twice back and forth dialogue, and then it ends and the child can't move their ideas forward. The other piece that I want to add, Tabitha, what you were saying with the teachers, and then you think, oh, okay, they've got this social responsibility contract in the rearing of your child because they're with them so much. Well, here's one of the problems. I'm in New Jersey, and the city of Newark is so stretched for its teachers, unlike the southern counterparts, which have gone to a 4-day school week, not adding the hours, but giving Monday off for everybody to try to entice people to join teaching. Instead, what's happening in Newark is that a large percentage of the time, there's no teacher, so they have a rented security guard so that the youth can get butts and seat hours, but there's no education, there's no administration, there's no engagement. And then you can see the scores reflected. The 9 high schools in Newark in their national report card had an average 4th grade reading and mathematics level. So what do? Who owns the problem?
We all own the problem. And here's the thing, we all own the problem. And let's be very clear. I'm tired of hearing, because my kids are no longer in school, I don't have skin in the game. Yes, I do, because those kids are going to eventually be my employees, my supervisors, my dentists, doctors, and lawyer. At the end of the day, the bottom line is my tax dollars don't stop just because I don't have kids in school. So I have a responsibility. If I'm unhappy with the outcome of what is happening in school, it is my personal responsibility to make a change and a difference. And for me, I created Keeping Your Kids Safe. And I actually started this conversation with Save Our Kids, because everyone's saying they didn't know these solutions existed. Like Jean is saying, hey, I'm going to help you prevent this, because all we want to do is be reactionary to everything. And that's not the way to reach a child. If you wait for the child to fall in a hole before you say there's a hole, they're going to look at you like, did you see that hole before I fell into it? Yes, I did. But I wanted you to learn the hard lesson. I call BS. That's wrong. It is our collective responsibility. And so I will ring the bell every day of the week until I get somebody to do something different. Education is not manufacturing. We don't send little people in to bring out soldiers at the other end. I send my kids to be educated, not be bullied, not to be tormented, not to be something is singing over here. So not to do any of these things. I'm sending them to you to educate them so that they can be productive human beings. If you can't do that, just raise your hand and say it's not good time, so that I can find something elsewhere. But once I figure out that the problem exists with my children, I need to speak up. I'm a parent. I'm a taxpayer. I live in an area. I am responsible. And so educators, at the end of the day, your metrics is the broken part. Your activities and what you're doing need to be better at what you're doing, but the metrics are telling you you are failing. And if you feel as though 60% being able to read on grade level is acceptable, I would like to have a conversation with you, because that is not acceptable. That is not acceptable. Children signing contracts, signing over their lives because they can't read is not acceptable. Children not feeling like, so what happens when you back anybody into a corner? They're going to come out fighting. That's why Jean is here, right? I just feel like, and Laura Lynn, I love the fact that you're like, how can we do these things? How can we teach these children these things? Because critical thinking and independent thinking is missing. So tell me, where would we get that from, you guys?
I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, and just from my generation, I can tell you that if someone were to walk up to my parents and say, your son did this, my parents' reaction wouldn't be, no, he did not. They would be like, what did you do? And I'd be in so much trouble. They wouldn't believe a word. Even if I didn't do it, they would believe someone else. We've lost that. We start believing and defending the inappropriate behaviors and actions of children. They're children. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to do stupid things. They're kids. Their brains aren't fully formed. That's what school is for. That's what socialization is for. But we're wrapped up in what? We're wrapped up on social media. We're wrapped up on cell phones. Like Laurelyn's saying, they don't know how to have a conversation. That's one of the biggest problems that I keep seeing is when I'm talking to younger kids, they look down. They don't look you in the eye. There's none of those social skills. We've lost so much of that, and that contributes to all of this. It contributes to their inability to navigate through life, to deal with the stressors that they face, deal with bullying. Listen, bullying is part of life. We've all been bullied. It's a part of what you learn through that. It's not necessarily a horrible thing. The problem is it's going unchecked. It's being allowed to continue. And Tabitha, like you're saying, when someone says, hey, I'm getting bullied to the mom and dad, they don't listen. Hey, I'm getting bullied to their teachers and friends, and no one's listening. Well, you know what? You can't blame the kid for doing what he's doing because he's trying to do the right thing. Why are we not listening? Well, because we're so wrapped up in our own lives these days. We're so wrapped up in our own issues. You can't be. We've got to start having a little bit more open mind, pay more attention. It's part of what I talk about all the time, is being aware of your surroundings, being aware of really what's happening. Don't walk around with your face in your phone. Look what's going on. You'd be surprised what's out there. The phones and social media, yes, it's fun, but it's not your life. Life is here to be lived and have conversations, meet new people, and grow. And that's what school, that's where it starts. That's the foundation. And the kids are not getting that because they're just losing out, because the parents, the teachers, and people even without kids that interact with them, coaches and all this, people in clubs or organizations, no one is doing what they should be doing, which is being involved in these kids' lives and helping to shape and form them and teach them the valuable lessons about just basic life.
If I could add something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I work with one of the counties here in New Jersey in their juvenile justice program. And within this program, the juveniles that have been brought in for an offense, it might be something quite serious, like attempted murder. It might be something seemingly less serious, like cyberbullying or sexting, which is illegal in all states. But the difference is New Jersey at least made an effort, and they updated it so that if a child is sending sexually, nature pictures to another child, it's not regarded as pornography, but they tend to distribute pornography, but they have to come in and do psychoeducation and delinquency programs to get over it. Here's my whole point of all of this. The parents, at least one parent or guardian, is required to come in with the child and complete the psychoeducation program together. They refuse. And then the judge says, but you need to understand, if you don't do this, your kid's going into juvie, and there's bars in juvie, right? And not the kind of fun kind with cocktails, right? The other kind. And only then does the parent reluctantly agree to escort their child and to come in and do the program. And I want to add, if you don't provide crowd sharing passes to go pick up the adult and the child and bring them in for the psychoeducation counseling, they don't complete it. So I say, yes, I agree, Tabitha, the whole community has to get behind it. But it's so hard when there's so many forces against it and you're trying to move it along, but there's resistance, and people even saying, if your child's going to go to jail, they're like, send him, he's bad.
Because I think a lot of times parents don't feel empowered. So just like teachers have their hands tied, parents also have their hands tied. At a very young age, I realized that I never wanted to put my kids into any type of system. So whether I was going to be with their dad or not, right? Once we made the decision to go our separate ways, I did not want to put my children into the system. And the reason why was because when you invite a system into your family home, you invite them to fracture it worse than what it actually is already. So when you remove the ability for parents to parent, then you remove the ability for that parent to feel like they are part of a solution. And then instead of being told that they have to enter into those programs. So I'm talking from two different perspectives, one as a parent and then one as a spectator. And both times, I was part of the system. And I remember my mom being so frustrated because my father just would not do right. But the government put a dollar sign on my head. They said I was only worth $50 a month. So when you put that type of label on somebody, you don't get an opportunity to be anything different. When my kid was having a problem, I remember going to the school and they said, they were, I was like, please don't do that. Just tell me what he did. My kids are out of my sight. They're going to do some crazy things. And it's okay for it's okay for them to do crazy things because this is a safe space for them to figure out that it's unacceptable to move forward with that. Right. But you trying to sugarcoat it and thinking, not my child. Yes, your child. Stop saying that. Yes, your child. And then and then you have to have expectations for your parent number two, which is school. School is responsible for this. If I put into my child a value system that I want them to have, school, please do not pull that out of them. It's not okay. You're positioning them to be soldiers in your war or as soldiers in your plan, but that's not where I want to see my kid. And I want them to be productive and healthy, well-rounded people, and it's not okay. There is one thing I want to address. So Amina says that the bullying conversation isn't landing for her. And I kind of understand why, right? From a bullying standpoint, like Jean says, we have all been bullied one time or another in our lives. For me, I had it from beginning all the way until I finally left corporate and it says, I surrender. I can no longer do this. So it is part of our everyday living. I get that. The reason why it's not landing for her is that most of the mass shootings that is happening is not happening from any other community but the white community. And so for her, she's saying if all of us in those different cultures are not going out and determining that they want to go and shoot up everything and everybody, why is it that we're not having that same ideation to go and do that type of harm and the others are? Because that, that's a really good point, because I never really understood. I was like, because some of us, we just sit there and say, okay, please let it not be. Okay, not us, right? But the point is that it's happening way too often in the white community, and no one's addressing that. And I'm just kind of curious, and I think that I would be nice for us to go ahead and respond to some of her comments.
Yeah, you don't mind, I'll jump in on this and
Absolutely.
just give my opinion. So one of the problems and the biggest frustration that I have is the polarization on these social issues and the tough conversations and the finger pointing that goes on. And one person thinks this is the reason, one person thinks it's that person, they think it's this race, that race. We're muddying waters up where we don't necessarily need to. And one of those things has to do with the statistics that are constantly being put out. And Tabitha, you had mentioned some of the ones earlier. You know, they're changing the way the statistics are being taken. The numbers and the polling are being done. They're adding ages to it. They're changing the questions a little bit to get an answer that maybe it isn't true. And you notice that we went away from saying active shooter and now it's mass shooting. And the reason is because that encompasses a bigger issue. If there is a gang shooting, that is going to be called a mass shooting. Well, if it happened in front of a school, they call it a school. Well, it's not necessarily the same thing. There's a difference in that. For me, from a research perspective, I've tried to look and untangle all of this, and there's not enough hours in the day. So why more white shooters than people of color? You know what? There's probably a lot of reasons, but there's also a big part of me that says, who cares? I don't care what color, I don't care what race, I don't care, boy, girl, I don't care about any of that. People are going through a problem that is resulting in them creating a violent effect that's destroying lives. Sometimes I think that when we try to break things down to who and what and all that, we're missing the big objective, which is to stop this from happening. And we're focused on, oh, well, is it the guns? Oh, is it, why are white people? Why not black? I don't care. I have seen it. I don't care what color you are. You're a kid. I want to help you. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. So I understand the reason for the question. And a lot of times I always look, I wonder if this happens one place more than another. You know, sometimes that can have an impact, but I think we've passed that point at this point. I think really and truly, we need to get down to the biggest issue of why this is happening. And to me, it's a breakdown of everything we've spoken about. There's poor communication. There's inability to deal with your emotions. Parents aren't getting involved or defending their kids' bad behavior, or the school is afraid to say anything because they don't want to get in trouble with the parents. Everyone's afraid to do what they're supposed to do. They're afraid of having no accountability. And I know teachers feel like they don't have power. I felt in law enforcement I didn't have power until I realized, wait a second, you hired me to do this job. I'm going to do this job. And teachers need to start standing up. And it's very hard. And it's going to come at a cost. It definitely is. It's tough to do. Living in this world is very hard these days because everyone's worried about getting in trouble and being blamed and labeled and all that stuff. We need to stop doing that. We need to start coming together and focus on finding a solution based on being human, being a person. And that's just my opinion. So sorry.
Yeah. So I want to address a little bit what you said, Jen, because I think that it is important to ask the why question. And I think that has not been asked because it's like it goes too much of what we can do. So there is a lot of, okay, let's put police in the school. Let's do, let's prevent that way rather than really trying to understand. And I think that asking the question why the majority of the kids who are killing are white is important.
Okay.
It's very important because it's like, what is behind that? This is part of, I think this is also part of the why question. And there has been already research trying to look at that. What is it that is this commonality between all the white kids and usually white male, not female, who are engaging in that? So, because when you start investigating those questions, then you would start addressing the problem. Because I don't think they are addressing the problem. I think all they are doing is just putting more police in the school and making things more and more strict for that to not happen. And they are still not addressing the major problem, which is the mental health issues of those kids, which is the bullying that has always existed, but has scaled to a certain level that is beyond what people can take now because people are committing suicide because it's much easier to bully through cyberbullying than face-to-face.
Mm-hmm.
So there are so many issues happening, and that's why I think it needs to be addressed. One of the things that people say is that people, non-white kids, endure so much issues and so much bullying all their lives that usually they don't, they just develop a higher resilience to deal with problems more than white folks do. So that's one thing that has already been come up in research.
Well, they've also talked about just population wise, there's more white people than people of color, and that could. And this is my whole thing is we can, Lucille, I agree with you. It is an important question, but I get worried that sometimes we focus so much on this, like why, but there's more general things that we can do now. There's more. I think the bigger issue in the long term, yes, why is one race, why are males, why is that happening, is going to play into it. But I think there's so many things that we can do without getting too wrapped up in that. We can really start looking at why we allow kids to treat each other the way they treat each other, but the parents are acting in the same fashion as the kids. And this is what I keep finding is the parents are saying, no, that's okay for my kid to do that. And oh, it's not that bad. And they're making excuses. And again, everyone's worried about getting in trouble for things. And it's just tough. It's a mess. And I only caution that sometimes we get so focused on those questions that we're letting it continue to happen. We're going to all start having these arguments and opinions. And in the meantime, it's still happening. I'm more like, hey, let's get in there. Let's fix this problem. There's things that we can do right now. Let's start having that conversation about why parents aren't getting involved, why teachers and administrators particularly are letting this go. Why aren't we all start working together? And that's just sort of the angle that I was saying. But I agree with you. It is a question that needs to be answered, but it's not the big question as far as I'm concerned. It really isn't.
Well, even if we answer the question, we're not addressing it. That's the issue. The issue is addressing the question, not just answering.
I understand.
I agree.
I agree with you on that.
I agree. Now, here's the thing. This is why this is so important. So this is why Save Our Kids is like, I've made it a very strong point to do this, is that we know we have a problem. We are very aware of what that problem is, regardless of what that problem is. So our children are dying, whether it's through their own hands or through gun violence or through someone else's hands. And that is something we can control. That is something we can change. Our children can't read on grade level. That is something we can control. That is something we can change. The fact that we have so many kids going to sleep hungry every night, their minimum basic needs are not being met, and then we're asking them to go to school every single day to be spoken to as if they do not count and they do not have a word, they do not have a voice. And then we're expecting them to come out on the other side of 18 and continue a life where everybody has continued to shut them down. These are things that we can control. These are things we can change. So each of you are brought here because you have a solution for the schools. So once this is, because we are live, once they have been able to see this and listen to it, and if they're really wanting to make a change, you have now a solution to a problem that they can solve. If you solve for X, you can take one problem off of the table. If you solve for bullying, you can take that part off of the table for a period of time. It'll resurface, but I mean, at least you can focus on something else. If you can reach all 25 of your students in your classroom and not only 15 of your students in your classroom, you can solve this problem. So no longer can a school official, administrator, principal, or parent say, I didn't know that was a problem. I didn't know there was a solution. They can no longer say that, because that is what I have been met with many, many times. They're like, I didn't know that that was a problem. How do you not know that kids are being dropped off at the wrong bus stop? That little boy was on People magazine because he's ringing the doorbell talking about, they just dropped me off and can you help me find my mommy? Or what about the kid that was woke up soaking wet from sweating because he was sitting in that bus, laying in that bus, sleeping, and that bus driver left him on the bus, and he woke up in the bus barn, and one could not get off of the bus. One of the kids couldn't get off the bus because he didn't know how to work the machine. He didn't know how to work the door. How do you not see these problems? So when people say that this problem exists, please listen and hear them when they say it. But at the same time, as a taxpayer, as a mom, as a auntie, as a human being and a participant in this world, it is my responsibility to ring the bell and say, I expect more out of our teachers, our parents, and our systems. And until you do better, I will not be quiet until those children say, somebody heard me, somebody listened to me, and I'm good now. And I feel seen, heard, and acknowledged. And my basic needs are met. We still have work to do. So as we go ahead and close this out, we have a few more minutes. I just want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit more about what your solution is and who you're looking to meet. Because at the end of the day, our goal here is to provide a solution to a group of people who are so inundated with everything else and all the noise of every day that they sometimes cannot see that we're here just to help, not here to rob.
So I'm going to say more from the educator's perspective, and because I have seen examples of it, which I thought were very, very productive. I've seen elementary teachers bringing social and emotional learning into the classroom in their morning meetings and really working with the kids. This has been very, very effective for children to discuss that. Unfortunately, it tends to disappear when they go into middle school. But examples in middle school and high school have been to create a circle of dialogue where kids discuss any conflict or any things that arrive in the school. So I think those are have been very effective solutions that the school, and it actually came very much from the teachers, initiative from the teachers to work with the mental health of the kids. So I think that these are wonderful, that can be replicated in any school and in any classroom.
I think that that's good. That's good. You would be surprised. Now, one of these ones I did, if you go back and look at one of the older ones, it was told, somebody put in the comments that when they brought mental health to the administrators, they were told it wasn't necessary and that it was not a priority. And on the screen, you can see all of us kind of freeze because we're like, wait, what? And so you would be surprised how much people just don't want to, they just don't want to, they don't want to be a part of that. They're just not interested in talking about the mental health part. And like I said, there's one person, they said most of the teachers are on depression medicine anyway. So if a lot of the teachers are looking for outside help, then there is time. It's time for us to do something different. Okay, Jean, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think bringing in and training for teachers to spot and identify what the concerning behaviors is it's sort of like a second level of prevention. The first level of prevention is really teaching these kids how to handle their emotions. And I'm glad Lucila was saying was about their schools that are doing that. I think that's vital. And I mean, these kids don't know how to respond. But it takes that bigger push. But mainly what we do is we teach the teachers how to identify those behaviors. And you know, we do run into probably the same thing, Tabitha, that you run into, which is a lot of well, we don't have that issue here. We don't have the funding here. You know, there's an old saying that show me your budget and I'll show you where your priorities are. And when it comes to school violence, it's never a priority until after it happens. And this is the problem. It's that whole reactionary thing instead of being proactive. I mean, who cares if you know how to respond to a violent encounter after it happens? Why don't we prevent it? Then we don't have to worry about that. Then it's, you know, the chance of it happening is so much less. I think we really have to focus on that. But yeah, I mean, that's essentially what our mission is, to help teachers and administrators identify concerning behaviors before it becomes an issue, so they can intervene and stop an act of violence, and honestly get that student the help that they need. So.
Yeah, I agree. So what I will say here is that I've been having these conversations for periods of time. I'm actually, my company turned 9 years old. Whoa!
Wow! Congratulations!
Thank you very much. I didn't think I was going to make it. Good Lord! So the one thing I will say is this, and actually it's for both of us, I think for sure. What I've learned is that parents have their expectation or their anticipation for our children is that it is a lifelong, once they're created, to be a part of their lives for the rest of my life. Okay. But when something happens, an act of violence, a mishap, and things like that, your next step is the one that causes the most harm to any family or any person having that experience. And what I mean by that is that my child is supposed to be with me for the rest of my life, right? And when a child dies outside of my home, outside of my control, that I have to live with their death and the loss for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But teachers, they have replacement children every year over year, that starts to blur the line of I lost that child. Meanwhile, every day that parent gets to go home and figure out that child is not there anymore. They'll never be there anymore, and things like that. So by placing ourselves in somebody else's shoes, we help to identify the fact that, how would you feel if somebody said, we'll wait for somebody to die before we put something in place? That's the difference between whether or not you want to proactively support and change what's happening at child's development, and being able to say, no, it's okay. You know, I need to make a change now. So you either make the change now or you make the change later, but no matter what, there's still a change that has to happen. And that is the responsibility of all. I do thank everybody for being here today. I think has been a great conversation and you've added great value. My whole entire hope and goal is that other people that will come on and see this will actually reach out to you, each of you, and say they want to be part of the solution. And for that, I very much thank you for spending the time. I thank everybody in the comments and all of the information. Please feel free to reach out to each one of us if you have any more comments, questions, or concerns and would like to continue this conversation. But for now, until next time, everybody, words are power. Remember to use them wisely. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate the support and look forward to you visiting us again next week. Same time, same place. Until then, words are power. Please remember to use them wisely. If you have an interest, like to be on our live show, please let us know and send us a direct message.